Scentland, the land of scent. Hello and welcome. It's Chris back with another fragrance review, and today it's all about one note, one ingredient, a special one, very special one, honey. Honey, which has been mostly used in the 70s and 80s to be a keynote in men's designer fragrances. And so we're going to concentrate on these fragrances today. My favorite 5 of those men's designer fragrances that have the prominent note of honey. Now, honey is not necessarily always sweet. It has a sweet element, obviously, but it's this syrupy, dense, very special characteristics, very noticeable. If honey is in the fragrance, it's very obvious. So you have to be careful that when you apply, but also I think when you blend honey in any fragrance, because it is something that makes its presence felt, and you can, once you spray it out, you immediately smell honey in there. As I say, it's not necessarily because it's sweet. It has this special characteristic about it, and it gives the fragrance also an overall warmth, similar to maybe amber, which is much more prominent in men's fragrances, because it's much less of a risk to put in amber, which is much more neutral warmth, than the honey warmth, which is very, kind of come across as a bit overbearing or even animalic when mixed up with notes like patchouli, rose, pine, moss, all the rose I mentioned. So these benzoin, all types of woods, when blended with honey, it's a sensitive affair for the fragrance to remain not only a honey show, but an overall great blend, great composition. And those 5 that I've chosen today are not, I haven't chosen them in a particular ranking sort of presentation. Today is just my 5 favorite fragrances in regards to the honey note, which they all contain, obviously. But we must start, obviously, our top 5 with the first real fougere honey-based fragrance of the 70s. It came out in 1973 from the house of Paco Rabanne. Paco Rabanne pour Homme. This was the first, obviously, honey-centered fragrance out there. And it has all these other ingredients that I just mentioned. It has this mossy, piney factor. It has this floral factor to it as well. It's green, it's soapy, yet it's very much honey. You can immediately smell it, and you can love it, and you are able to hate it as well, because this fragrance really has these honey balls, right? And many people swear that this fragrance is an eternal masterpiece. So do I, and many people just can't stand it, And I think one of the reasons is that the patchouli honey combination is just very 70s in this one. So Paco Rabanne pour Homme, that was definitely, and still is today, the benchmark of maybe any honey-based fragrance, and any honey-based blend, actually, because this is really a honey-based fougere instead of citrus fougere or a piney fougere, okay? So benchmark Paco Rabanne pour Homme, definitely. Then in 1985, the German house of Boss, Hugo Boss, came out with their very first fragrance, and I only have the box here because I gave the bottle to a great friend of mine, the guy whom we play sometimes a bit of music, a bit of jamming here at home. Boss number 1 is being called now. At the time it was just Boss, Hugo Boss, their first male fragrance, and it has a tremendous honey note in there. It's very heavy, and again you find this mossy, patchouli, piney, floral aspect in this fragrance, and this very heavy honey, and sometimes the combination of all those creates a, how shall I phrase this politically correct, creates a man's restroom pissoir kind of feeling, okay? Don't get me wrong, but it really does. It does so in a positive manner, though. And you have to remember that many men's clubs have had, or still have, in their restrooms those fragrances on the shelves when the gentlemen are have finished their business and they wash their hands, and then they, before they leave back to the club to have their cigar or to you know, to drink their cognac or sambuca, they apply some fragrance. And maybe this is also a contributor to the fact that this particular blend, when honey blends with these dirty notes or floral notes, this is being referred to as this man's restroom kind of smell. I think, you know, it's definitely, sometimes they say it's old manish or 80s or 70s or whatever, but it has this overall category that is very much dividing the opinions. Some people really love it, mostly older guys like I am, and the new folks just think it stinks, right? Because it reminds them obviously also to what I've mentioned, this man's restroom type of vibe, which is there, you know, it's true, but let's not simplify it to that level. It's much more complex, and it's just such a delicate composition. To dump that down to a restroom feeling is just not doing it any justice. So boss number one belongs into that category as well. Alain Delon, ladies and gentlemen, the great Alain Delon has brought out a fragrance in 1979 called AD, Alain Delon. And this was my very first fragrance. I bought this, not this particular bottle, but this fragrance in 1990. My first fragrance, my first signature fragrance, ladies and gentlemen. Tremendous honey note. And again, what do you find in there? You find this rosy, ambery. There's actually, I think there's amber in here, but I may be mistaken. Patchouli also. Piney, maybe even more, a bit piney. More pine than patchouli in here, I think. Combination with the honey. But again, honey is there in a very, very sophisticated, blended in a very sophisticated manner in this particular fragrance. Again, you have this color, you know. This is mostly the color. If you have, I couldn't show you with boss number one, it has the same color actually. Paco Rabanne we don't know because it's hiding in this green bottle, but the other two I'm going to be representing to you have the same golden color. So it's definitely a sign or a mark of any good honey fragrance, that it has this great warm golden juice inside. So Alain Delon, how should I present this? It's very well visible. That's the way love goes. Alain Delon from 1979. This has been discontinued by now, but is one of my favorite honey-based fragrances out there. Great warmth, great sophistication, and just a special blend. Let's stay with a famous actor, or just celebrity, put it in that category, and let's switch over to Spain from France, and to the great actor with the name of Antonio Banderas. Antonio Banderas, ladies and gentlemen, has brought out this fragrance named after him, Antonio, in 2007. Now I must say, 2007. So far we had 73, 85, 79, right? Antonio Banderas had the balls to say, well, you know, what the heck, you know, I'm an old guy and I love honey. Maybe this is what he said. And I love those old type of, you know, Alain Delon and Hugo Boss and Paco Rabanne's of that time with all those honey notes. I want to make my own honey-based fragrance. And he did. And he called it after his name, Antonio. So this is why I think it's a personal fragrance to Banderas. And let me tell you, before I continue and to describe the fragrance, is that this is, in my opinion, the best of them all in regards to honey smell, smelling of honey. Actually, the whole bottle design is amazing. You know, it has this bee stuff going on all across it. It is so, I think, because it captures the honey note in a modern way. It's not as divisive, not as aggressive. Obviously, not only because the use of honey in here, but the patchouli and all that is so strong in all those others, or pine, is a bit more used in a bit more modern manner in this fragrance. And this is killing every other parfum I know, because the longevity with this fragrance is amazing. Yeah, this has been discontinued, so that's a proof to me that honey these days is out of fashion in men's designer fragrance in the industry, and it's a shame, because I think this is by far the best fragrance from Antonio Banderas, and I cherish it. I use it only in winter time, and Antonio by Antonio Banderas, a perfect modern version of the use of the note of honey in a man's fragrance. And then, last but not least, let's go back to Germany, to the house of Marbella Man Classic. It has been simply named Marbella Man. It has been released, the original version of this one, in 1977, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously in the footsteps of this one, which again, as I say, set the benchmark. Many fragrances that follow Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, like Azzaro Pour Homme, they all, although there's no honey in Azzaro Pour Homme, but they all thought about a fresh, aromatic, appealing fougere fragrance to create that type of fragrance. And Marbella has decided to go with the honey, and to go with all those ingredients in there. So you have the patchouli in there, you have the rose, you have the sandalwood, maybe some carnation in here as well. It's a very, very dense and classic composition, and this one is special in this particular list of 5, and I tell you why. Because strangely, even though it came out in 1977, it combines, Marbella Man combines all the characteristics of the other 4 I have mentioned so far. It has the soapiness, the soapy honey vibe of the original great Paco Rabanne Pour Homme. It has this kind of man's restroom type of honey with that was very much, or still is very much present in Boss Number 1. It has the warmth, and especially the first minute smells very similar to the Alain Delon version of a honey-based fragrance. This is this fresh honey aspect to it, and then the tremendous honey warmth of Antonio's honey is in here as well. So if you want, forget all the other 4, because it's all represented in here. You know, it's a weird one, and as I say, it came out in the end of the 70s, or at the end of the 70s. They gave it this new look. It has a whole range of products, from shower gel to aftershave to balm, or whatever you want. And it's still very much available in the German-speaking countries, and it's still available on Notino, actually. I'm not being sponsored by Notino, I'm just saying that it's there, to my surprise, actually, with some other Marbella fragrances. I love this because it's very German. As I say, it's a bit soapy, it's warm, a bit flowery as well. It's honey, it's classy, it's very much 80s. This is 80s bottled, totally, even though it came out late 70s. What it stands for really is the 80s. And great performance as well. I love the simplicity, classy simplicity of the bottle. Just a tremendous fragrance, Marbella Man Classic. And if I look at those 3, at those 5 that I presented, these 3 are still available, okay, and the other 2 have been discontinued. So interesting. If you love honey, check these fragrances out, because you know, it's a special taste. It requires a special love for the keynote of honey, but you have that. If you have that, and if you cherish honey in a fragrance, a man's designer fragrance, go for them. And if you don't want to waste your time seeking all the others out, just go for Marbella, because it, you know, basically holds all the characteristics of the other 4 that I've represented today. So thanks very much. That was Chris with my 5 favorite honey-based fragrances, and I'll be back with more. Take care. Bye bye.